All right, let me go on present mode. Can everyone see my screen all right? Okay, got it. Thank you. We have a lot to cover, so we'll get started. And the topic for the day is practical Vedanta, right? So one of, as I got into this spiritual path and started to learn and practice, one of the things that's always stuck with me is how do I apply all this in my daily life? What does this actually mean? Why do I care? Why should I care? And what does it take? What type of effort? And so on. I mean, when we jump into anything for that matter, any skill, learn a musical instrument or a sport, this is what we want to know. What is in it for me? um, and what type of effort is needed, right? So that's the topic. I hope to answer some of the questions that were raised. In fact, there were some really relevant questions, and more might arise, but that's the whole point of the inquiry-based approach. That is, as we pointed out earlier, that's the approach with spirituality. It's an inquiry based. All right, let's start with I'll start with this prayer, which is basically acknowledging the fact that these teachings have come through a whole lineage of teachers who have kept this alive, and pointing out Adi Shankara in between, and all the teachers that we have learned from. And it's a reminder to all of us that we are all seekers, and in a way, this is by seekers and for seekers. We are all in the process, and we are sharing our learning with everybody, and acknowledging the teachers in the process. I should also, in fact, acknowledge uh, Chakra Srivastava, a friend of mine. I borrowed some slides from him for this presentation, and some of the artists whose work I've used in this presentation. So thank you. All right. So let's start with the basic human condition, where we are today, right? So what exactly do we want in life? If we think about it from that angle, we want to be happy. I think we all will agree, and we want to have good health. We want to be successful, right? Um, Many of us want wealth, power, fame, you name it, and then we go after things, house, cars, and gadgets, what have you, right? We want to have good relationships with people around us. We want to be creative. We want to be efficient in what we do, and we are often faced with different we are at crossroads at various points in our life, and we want to make well-informed decisions, something that's grounded on something more than just emotion at that time, right? Many of us also, in fact all of us, want to do the right thing for the greater good of society and for people, and be helpful. We want to have a higher purpose in life, and these are all great things, and we want to do this in life, right? We have the opportunity to achieve all of this. We also don't want to what we want to get rid of is, all the stress and the anxiety, the fears, in fact. Um, we 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 want to succeed, we don't want to fail. We don't want to be disappointed, and so on, right? So there are a lot of things that we want, and a lot of things that we want to get rid of, and we kind of don't want to go there, right? So in this pursuit, we start off with various things. When we've all been there, done that, right? We've gone to a good college, or and then if you ask, why did you go? Yes, you want knowledge, but oftentimes it's, hey, I want that job, and this education is going to give me that job. And why job? Because, hey, that's going to give me the money. Why do you need the money? Well, money is needed to buy a house, and the car, and so on. And then soon it starts to shift into, yes, I want to get into a good relationship, and then soon it becomes a bigger house and a bigger car, and so on, right? More money to support that newer lifestyle, and it keeps going on and on. And add to other things like travel, and you want to have a certain set of friends, and learn new things. And in fact, there is also purpose in life. I know we want to perform service to society. So there are so many things. So, but if you continue down this path, where does this end, right? What is the end goal in all of this? Can we take some time to think about this? Do we take a time to think about why do we do what we do, right? So, um, in many ways, it seems like we all want to be happy, right? That's something I think we can all agree upon, that we are doing all of this so that we can be happy. And it seems like we connect that happiness to a, a condition. So we say that I'm happy when multiple conditions are met, and then we chase that condition. We try to satisfy that condition so that we can be happy, right? So I kind of assume that by following the desires, right? We have X number of desires, and we keep pursuing those desires, and by checking them off, we feel that that's going to give us happiness. So in many ways, the happiness equation for us sort of becomes number of desires fulfilled divided by the total number of desires. So as we fulfill more and more, we feel that, hey, you know what, we should be happy because the numerator is increasing. Of course, we are going to be happier and happier. But what we really see, right, in real life is that the happiness does not last. What seems to happen is that somehow, as we reach the goalpost has been shifted. And we're wondering, how did that happen? So, for instance, what I mean by this, let's take an example. So, when we were young, we wanted to get into a good university, and that was the aim. And so we really did well. We worked hard, and eventually got there. And we were elated, right? We received that note in the mail that we got this particular college, and we are completely overwhelmed with emotion, and we are on top of the world. But soon that goes away. You are in the university, and that is gone. That happiness that we experienced, that bliss that we experienced, lasted for a few days, perhaps. But where did it go after that? Did it last? It didn't. That's what I mean by the goalpost has shifted. Now the goalpost has shifted to, well, I want to get into that university to pursue my master's degree. I want to get this job so that I can start earning a certain amount of money. And then we got the job, and then it goes again. So what we really end up doing is something like this, right? Where, like as in this cartoon here, this person is doing the same thing, right, again and over and over and over again, but every time we expect a different result. And what is that different result that we expect? We expect it to be permanent happiness. We want that happiness, we want to hold on to that, and we want to hold on to that very tight. But we do the same thing again and again and again. Well, it's not going to happen, right? We do the same thing expecting different results, but we are at the same place. So in some ways, it seems like the happiness lasts for some time, but soon we regress back to a state of unease. So we are constantly on this hamster wheel. It seems like that to us, right? I mean, uh, and it goes on again and again, right? And so the whole point being, can we step back and ask some questions? Now, is long-lasting or permanent happiness possible? Should I not pursue these goals of pleasure, wealth, purpose? Should I not pursue these? And how do I resolve this conflict that seemingly is there, which between, on one side, these goals which are quote unquote materialistic, and spirituality? There seems to be this conflict. Is there a conflict? If yes, how do I resolve that conflict? Right? So, well, and this is a question that Arjun had for Krishna, right? Which is, you know what? Forget all this. I'm taking sannyas, and I want to become a monk. and for him, that seemed at that point to be the best answer. And does it even make sense? And is that required? Right. So just some questions, please hold on to this. I hope we'll resolve most of these questions, if not all, by the, or at least make you think about it or introspect on it some more by the end of this presentation. Right. So as we said earlier, the whole process or the path of spirituality is that of inquiry. We want to analyze. We just don't want to blindly believe what even the scriptures say, for that matter. In fact, the scriptures ask us to inquire, right? They provide us the path to inquiry. So in that same spirit, let's do some analysis of this particular human condition that we see ourselves in. So as we said earlier, we are seeking happiness from people, places, things, situations, events, everything that's around us, right? It's external to us. Now, the question to ask is, can these give us permanent happiness? Now, let's ask ourselves this: can anything impermanent give rise to anything permanent? Is that even possible, logically speaking, right? So I think the answer clearly seems to be no, that nothing impermanent that goes away in a few moments or a few days, can that give rise to something permanent? Now, if we, again, yet another way of looking at it, just to relate it to something that we experience, we buy a new car, right? We are really, really excited. This is the latest and the greatest. And we are extremely happy again for a few days. But, we have often seen this. People who have bought these brand new cars, whatever it may be, and after a few months, well, you go into the car and you actually see that it's dirty and it's not been kept well. There's bird poop on it and whatnot. It doesn't matter. It's become a meh. It's okay. Yeah, I was excited at the time, but well, that seems to have gone away, right? So there is law of diminishing returns with everything that's external. Now, take another case. So we are at a tennis match. You're playing a tennis match, and one person wins, the other person loses, right? So it's the same match result, that one person won, one person lost. One is elated that they won. The other is in despair that they did not make it, right? So the same result gives rise to two different things. One gave rise to happiness, the other gave rise to despair. So again, points to be noted. We'll get to this. So the question, again, logically speaking, to ask is, if the same result gives rise to two different things, can happiness be dependent on that result? Because it gave despair to the other person. If it always gives happiness to everybody, it should give happiness to everybody. If that is the case, it didn't. It's often not, right? Let's take the case of relationships. Now, in terms of any relationship between people evolve over time, right? Our likes and our dislikes, our personality evolves. And but at the same time, we expect everything to be the same. We ourselves are not the same person a few days. If you really look at it, everything right at the cell level of who we are has changed in the few days, right? Every cell in the body has been regenerated. So at the body level, we change. At the mind level, at the intellect level, we are constantly evolving and moving in different directions, but we expect certain things to be the same, right? So when expectations are met, we are happy with the relationship. When expectations are not met, we are disappointed, right? So even that seems to change, right? So the point, a key insight at this point, just purely based on logical reasoning until now, is that these external objects, places, people, things, cannot give us permanent happiness. It does give us some happiness for sure, but it doesn't give us the permanent happiness that we are seeking. We want to hold on to that, but that is just not there, right? What seems to have, we saw this equation earlier, which is that happiness is number of desires fulfilled divided by total number of desires. What seems to happen is that as we fulfill more and more desires, the surprising thing is that the total number of desires also keeps increasing. The denominator increases, in fact, at a faster pace than the numerator. So, what we go in thinking as, well, let me accomplish more, let me increase the numerator and thereby increase my happiness, somehow gets changed because the total number increases at a much faster rate, right? So we can again relate to this. So we eventually buy this new house, and suddenly we have X number of more desires because now we need the furniture, we need these other things that you need a garden, and you need things to maintain the garden, and so on. Now suddenly, lot more things have been added to the plate. So that seems to be, again, an observation, right? We are still at that stage where we are observing and logically making reasoning. So, but at the same time, we do experience happiness at various times. We feel that peak. We have all been through this. And where does that come from, right? So if we say that happiness does not come from all these different objects, but we do experience a lot of happiness at various times, and we've seen this in our lives. Where does that come from then? Logically speaking, we kind of eliminated external objects as the source of happiness. And there can only be two things. Either it's an object of experience or it is the subject, right? So we are the subject, right? And by we, I will classify, I'll quote unquote qualify it. Everything is an object, of experience, and we kind of rule that out as the source of happiness, as we saw earlier. And that leaves us with the subject. And even here, we start to look at our own self, which is the subject in this case, and say, is this body responsible or the source of happiness? Is it my mind that is the source of happiness? I mean, this is the way in which we can start thinking, right? Now, we rule out things one after the other. This is the this is the method that's used in the scriptures, which is to rule out and then arrive at what is, right? So here is a clue that the scriptures point out. And again, these are coming from our ancestors who have thought about this in very deep meditation states, and they realize this, right? And a big clue, in fact, VP Rajesh pointed this out as well. A big, huge clue is in deep sleep. And somebody else pointed out in a question saying, what happens in deep sleep, right? The clue is that in deep sleep, we do not experience pain. And when we say deep sleep, this is a state of sleep where there are no dreams either. So what then happens is our body has shut down, right? Again, logical reasoning here. Our mind has shut down. We know that because we wake up and find out that I did not know what happened. I slept like a baby. And somebody says, oh no, I was making all these noises. You haven't heard anything. Your mind has shut down. Your sense organs have shut down. There's nothing. And in that deep sleep state, a poor man who is struggling to make ends meet and a rich man who has everything that has been checked off, they are essentially the same. They experience deep sleep state in the exact same way. A patient who is in the ICU of a hospital, not knowing whether he or she is going to live the following day, in deep sleep, does not experience that pain. So this is a huge clue. Hold on to that. Okay. Now, with that, please do let me know if you're not able to. I just received a message. If you're not able to hear, please let me know. So with that, let's go into what the scriptures actually tell us. So the scriptures say that what we really, really seek are permanent peace, security, and happiness, right? I'll repeat that again. So permanent is an important factor here. peace, security, and happiness. These are the things that we really, really seek in every single thing that we do. Now, we saw this earlier. All the different things that we pursue in life, if you keep asking the question why, right? Within 5 to 7 whys, you will hit a wall saying, well, I'm doing that to achieve security, right? Whether it's a job, and you ask why, okay, money, house, why, and why. You eventually say, I want security, right? I want to keep my family secure. I want security for myself and my next generation. Or it could be that I'm doing this because I want to be happy, or I want to be at peace. You end up here. You keep asking. You can try this by yourself. Be very you don't have to talk to anybody about it. Just mentally kind of go through this exercise, and you will see that you will reach this point. And this is very interesting, because this is something the scriptures say. Finally, this is what we seek. And Vedanta tells us that peace and happiness is not something that we attain or we have to get from outside. This is something that we will find only inside, and it is within us. Again, this is something we've all heard as well, that you have to go inward. You have to go inward. What does that really mean, right? So Vedanta tells us that you will find it inside, and only inside. And it further goes on to claim that peace and happiness, they are our real nature. It's not something that you have to attain. It's not something that you have to add, just like we wear a shirt or clothes. It's not something that you need to add to yourself. This is your real nature, right? This is inside you, and this is you. Again, now we ask ourselves, okay, this is a huge claim. We take that claim, but we want to understand what that really means. So somebody shared this in WhatsApp the other day. What you're looking for is already inside you. And that set me thinking, in fact, while I was preparing for this and thinking about this presentation. I knew I had to use this here. Um, a good example of this, right? We've all lost our keys somewhere. We kept our keys, and we start looking everywhere, right? Under the couch and inside the drawers, and you want to head somewhere, and you're like, you can't find the car keys, and you're looking everywhere. And then finally you say, okay, you know what? I was at the park yesterday. Let me go there and see if I've left it at the park. And you head out, and you as you normally do, you put your hands in the jacket pocket, and there it is, right? The car keys are right in the jacket pocket, right? So it was always there. You were wearing the jacket always. The car keys were always there, right there. But what was missing is the knowledge of the fact that it was there, right? So what disturbed you earlier was the fact that the keys were missing, but the knowledge of the fact that the keys were inside in your own jacket pocket now removed all those emotions, right? And now you are suddenly there is happiness. You just got it. You just found it, and you're no longer disturbed, right? So I just thought that was funny, and when somebody shared this, and it was doing the rounds in WhatsApp. Okay, now where we are now is we are saying that, hey, happiness and peace is inside ourselves. So what does this inward journey look like? How do I find this inside myself, right? That is the next logical step in this process. Now, this is where, unlike science, where somebody can point at something and say, and that we are able to kind of repeat it very easily, right? Not easily. I mean, at least through experiments, and you can claim that. Here, it is a little bit of a personal journey, in fact, right? But the scriptures can help us. They pointed to us, because these are capturing some of the personal journeys of people our ancestors, and it's um, codified in various ways. So to me, in my journey, the two kind of um, scriptures that the two scriptures that I ended up going to, right? Like, you want to go to the source, you want to, obviously there's a lot of information out there if you're really looking for it. Then I wanted to go to the source, and I want to go to the truth, right? See, go right to the source and understand what it has to say. And the two books or works that helped me are the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and the Bhagavad Gita. Now, Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, right up front, right in the second sutra, explains, and in fact, not explain, this is a sutra, so it's in a very concise, very precise format, says that yoga, the definition of yoga itself is the cessation of the modifications of the mind. Okay, so we'll see what it really means. So yoga is the cessation of the modifications of the mind. Now, this is a sutra, which means that these are, and the sutra format is such that a lot of information is packed into a small amount of words, right? So in a way, it's like a compressed file in today's terminology, right? So much is compressed into a few words. So obviously, we are not doing justice to it just by translating it. There is a lot more that can be said about this. But think about this. It says the cessation of the modifications in the mind. So the mind becomes very, very calm and peaceful. So when the mind becomes calm and peaceful and there are no modifications in the mind, the seer abides in its own true nature. That is the second part of it. It's saying that you will see your true nature when your mind is in a state of calmness and peacefulness, right? Okay. So now you understand. So this seems to be the experience that's been captured. Now let's move on to what the Gita says here. I found a couple of. There are many verses. I obviously related to this, but then I just picked a couple. Right. So here it says, I will not attempt to say the Sanskrit. I'm not good at it. Neither have I. Learn to chant the Gita. But what it says here is, when the sensory organs are in contact with the external world, it gives rise to sukha and dukkhas, right? The joy and sorrow, just like cold and heat. But Krishna is telling Arjuna in this, and he has started his sermon, right? And he says, these are transitory, these are ephemeral, they are temporary. So learn to forbear them. And then goes on to say, the next one, and says that whoever is not tormented by this, right? And the key word here is equanimous. Whoever is able to stay in equanimity, their mind is equanimous in sukha and dukkha, right, is eligible for the highest of goals in spirituality, right? So, okay, a couple of things here. One is the sukha, which can roughly be translated as happiness here. It's we should understand that as the lower grade of happiness that we experience on a day-to-day basis, right? This is the happiness that we experience when we achieve things and when we acquire things and so on. This is the lower grade of happiness. We are not talking about the highest grade of happiness, which is in ourselves. But this is that small. Think of it as we have the ocean of happiness inside us, and this is a pail of that, right? A small part of that, a minuscule part of that, which is experienced as a lower grade of happiness that comes from external objects, right? So stay equanimous in this. So what this tells us, just as we did the logical reasoning as part of our inquiry. And again, as part of our inquiry, we are reaching out into these texts to see, hey, what do these texts have to say, right? a conclusion we can draw at this point is that a calm and peaceful mind, which is able to maintain equipoise in all situations, good and bad, experiences unconditional permanent happiness, right? So a prerequisite to experience that permanent happiness is a calm and peaceful mind. Again, going back to the Yoga Sutras, the definition of yoga, which is chitta vritti nirodha, which is the cessation of thoughts in the mind. Does it mean that I have to just stop all the thoughts? No. Again, that's where we need to go deeper into what it actually means, right? Okay. So, which is able to maintain equipoise, right? So then the next natural question is, great. I believe that peace and calm, equanimity, these can lead to happiness. I can see that. How do I achieve it, right? So that is the next natural question. Now, this is where, again, if you look at where the scriptures, what the scriptures do, is that it says that our real nature is actually hidden by three layers, right? The first layer, as they call it, is the mental impurities. The second part is the fact that our mind wanders, mind is distracted at all times. There's constant chatter in our mind and it's constantly wandering. It is unable to focus. It just gives us inputs at all the time, right? It's constantly going on inside us. And the third is ignorance, right? So in some ways, it is like this lake. Just imagine a lake I'm just giving a metaphor here of a lake where the source of light or happiness is at the bottom of the lake. It's a deep lake. Now, if you want to see the source, and to see that light clearly, there should not be any waves on the surface, and the water must be pure. It should be devoid of any sediments. And if that condition is true, the source of light can be seen from the top. It is in the same way. So we need to let that happen. We need to make sure there are no waves on the surface and make it pure by removing the impurities and let the impurities settle down. In this case, sediments settle down. And then that it is able to clearly let that light shine right through, isn't it? No, that's kind of the path, if you will, of how to go about, again, where the question being how to achieve peace, calm, and equanimity. Now, with that in mind, the next question to us is, okay, what exactly are these impurities again, and how are these formed, right? So what happens is that when we experience life, right, we experience things around us. These are perceived by our mind. The inputs come in through the sensory organs. These are perceived, and thoughts and perceptions are generated in our mind, right? Based on which we speak, we say things, we do things, our actions, and when we perform this again and again and again, it becomes a habit. And when that habit continues for a long period of time, they become ingrained as samskaras or vasanas, as we call it. These are deep-seated personality traits and mental tendencies, if you will, right? This is the character. This is who we are. When we say this is the character of a person, this is the personality. The personality is developed over a period of time, right from when we were, well, if you take it as when we were born, in fact, according to our scriptures, which believe in rebirth, right, we carry a part of it, or this whole personality traits, the samskaras and the vasanas, we had it at the time of birth from our previous births. And then in this current birth, we add more to it, right? So certain traits are strengthened. So we go through this, and those personality traits, again, are responsible for how we perceive anything in life, what thoughts come in. The thoughts are often not in our, most of the thoughts that we get in our mind are not consciously there. It is just there, right? Where do they come from? They come from deep inside us. And they are in the, what do you call that? And we don't have direct access to this, but they come in from a much deeper state. Now, so the impurities get formed when we experience life, when we go through different things in life, right? And those get strengthened, if you will, these mental tendencies and different things. And we're not saying it as bad or good or bad or anything. This is who we are, right? How we respond to situations. And this is also what makes us all different, right? Somebody might like something, the same thing might be disliked by somebody else. Let's take food, for example. Somebody likes fish, somebody else does not like fish. If somebody likes to smoke or drink, somebody else does not. Somebody likes a particular sport and what. So how are we all different? It is based on this kind of conditioning that has happened over many births and births, right? So um, it's just stating who we are. But at the same time, we have also accumulated a lot of um, tendencies which we want to get rid of. Now, there are certain situations that when we face, immediately there is rage or anger, right? So there might be situations that cause us to be very selfish and so on. So we want to get rid of that. Those are the impurities that we are talking about. But at the same time, certain other situations gives rise to the thoughts of compassion, of friendliness. So we want to strengthen that. So how do we go about this? Now, so the process as laid out by the scriptures it's threefold in a way. In fact, it's twofold, but the first one can be split into two. So first is to as we said earlier, we want to eliminate the impurities. We want to strengthen the good parts. And then on the other side, we want to reduce the mental wandering, right? So for the first part, one important thing is to understand the universal values, right? So um, just give me a second here. Can you pull that thing? I think as the day has broken, it's very, yeah, you can. Yeah, thank you. So the first part is to understand and assimilate the universal values. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And the second is to understand and assimilate karma yoga, right? In whatever we do. So I call this karma to karma yoga, action karma to making that yoga. And we'll talk about in very brief, though these are all very vast topics in itself. And the third part is meditation to reduce that mental wandering. So let's get on with this. So two methods to improve the impurities, as we said. So what are these universal values? So we are not talking about a specific religion's value or anything like that. These are basic universal human values, right? We're not talking anything specific to any religion. Let me put that right up front. So these are stated again in the Yoga Sutras as yamas and niyamas. So there are 5 yamas and 5 niyamas. That's the Yoga Sutra format. The Bhagavad Gita gives us 20 values, right? In chapter 13. In a few beautiful verses in chapter 13, these 20 values are laid out and has been written about in really great detail, actually, by Swami Dayananda, whose book we are reading, and many others. So overall, it also can be thought of as the dharma, or what is the right action? What is the right thing to do? What is right? What is wrong? And why is this important? It allows us to remove conflicts in our own mind, right? And how to make good decisions. Because if we are clear, if there is a framework that gives us or allows us to understand what is right and what is wrong in any given situation, isn't that an amazing, what do you call that, understanding to have? As we start making decisions, we will be forced to make decisions in life. Karma yoga is the yoga of action. We are doing work in everything that we do. And how do we immerse ourselves in that work and get the best work, do the best that we can, derive the best that we are able to do. And there is a way to do that, right? And that's what Karma Yoga tells us to do. And this is done by developing the right attitude, the right intention, and the right type of effort. This is laid out very, very beautifully in the Bhagavad Gita. And to me, that would be one of the core messages in the Karma Yoga for people like us, where we are today as seekers. So it can be roughly translated again as work for work's sake. And this is how you experience flow in work. So we'll again talk about it a little bit more. So to the first point, which is the universal values, I've just laid out a few. As I said, there are many more. Let's take a couple of them to kind of point out that these are much more than actually what is seen at the surface level. Now, let's take ahimsa, or non-violence. So when we say non-violence, I think all of us understand that, right? Obviously, non-violence. I don't want to be violent towards anybody. At the physical level, we understand. We are mature enough to understand that I don't hurt somebody physically. That's non-violence, sure. But it goes way beyond that. It goes in at the level of action in everything we do. It goes at the level of speech, being very careful about what we say. Does that hurt somebody? And most importantly, at the level of thought, right? Am I even aware of thoughts that could be potentially harmful to somebody? Why is this important? Again, as we saw earlier, those thoughts are unconsciously coming out of our subconscious, very deep in the subconscious, which are driven by the personality traits, again, that are inbuilt, that is who we are. Now, those thoughts that are unconscious, you didn't ask for that thought. When those thoughts are in a way violent, when I say violent, take it to the harmful, let's put it, violence seems to be a more stronger word there. Now, the thoughts lead to speech, and the speech leads to action, right? So at the level of thought we want to be, it encourages us to be non-violent even at the level of thought. But those are unconscious. It just arises. So how do you change something that's unconscious and you do not have direct control over, right? So that is the imbibing of values, and that's the level at which we are talking about. So even though we say ahimsa, we don't understand it very clearly. The whole point being, we need to go in much deeper to understand what these values are. Same thing with satyam. Again, yes, it's speaking the truth, but then there are levels and levels of information there, which is, for instance, take an example of a doctor who is who has to tell a patient that they have, that patient is not going to live for long because of cancer or something else, right? So here is, you are the doctor and you have to say this. Now you have a conflict now. Do you say the truth because you know the truth that this is a fatal condition, or do you now not say the truth and tell them that, hey, no, don't worry, you're going to be all right? You are in a conflict at this point. What is the right thing to do? Now, truth in this case, just to complete that point here, that example, says that truth is below ahimsa in terms of the level of values. So you can say the truth as long as, one, you don't benefit from it. You're not saying the lie because you're the beneficiary. Here it is for the greater good. You're also not making, so in this case, by saying the truth, you're going to cause a lot of problem to the other person. And in this case, you want to step back and say, you want to say put it in a much better way, if you will. In fact, you might even lie, and that itself becomes the truth.
Kishore, you have 5 more minutes.
Thank you. Right. So again, I have a few things that I put it on the slide here. This is just a small summary. Amanitvam and arjavam are two excellent values that we can imbibe and understand really well. Amanitvam is demanding respect and recognition, validation from others. This is huge in social media today. This is something that I've heard from youngsters saying that this is a bigger problem today, especially in today's times with social media. Arjavam is a very is straightforwardness, being able to align thought, speech, and deed in whatever we do, right, and so on. Now, how do you acquire these values, right? So here's a golden rule, do to others what you have others do to you, right? It's basically comes down to this. If you don't like others to do certain things to you, you don't do the same thing to others, right? And and to imbibe this, to apply this in every single situation. So that is the practice we're talking about. Now, what is the benefit? What is in it for me is that it removes conflicts in the mind. And when the conflicts are removed, what remains is a calm mind, right? It also allows us, teaches us what is right and what is wrong. It's a framework for making better decisions. And when you make better decisions, you make better decisions from a calm mind than from a disturbed mind. So that's why the values are important. And same thing with yoga in karma yoga, which is about all the actions that we do. It encourages us to perform the action for the work, for work's sake. At the time of going through with the work, if we are constantly thinking about what ifs, okay, if I do, am I going to get that? Or what if I don't do well, and so on, then the action is, we are not as productive in the work as we would have been if we didn't have to worry about it, right? So this provides us the framework for performing actions that we do in our lives, right? So this talks about samatvam, which is the mental balance, or developing that attitude of samatvam, which is the balance between and to treat both success and failure as exactly the same, and not to, and remove that from the equation and instead replace it with samatvam, right? So again, this is a huge topic. Beyond we don't have the time to go through it just in this presentation, but for a different topic. uh, this was an interesting quote. The highest reward for a person is not what he gets from person's work, is not what you get for it, but what you become from it, right? So that kind of captures karma yoga in whether it was done um, uh, with the knowledge of karma yoga or not. That kind of seems to resonate, right? Again, so benefits: you do your best work, you get the highest amount of efficiency while remaining centered, and remove and reduce stress and anxiety, because you're no longer thinking about what ifs while you're performing the work. And meditation obviously is so Rajesh, I might take just around 3 to 5 more minutes, if it's okay.
Yeah, you have three. Please take 3 minutes and we'll close it because there are a lot of questions coming in.
Okay, thank you. So meditation, as we said, we want to reduce the mental wandering. And in this case, obviously there are many types of meditation. In this context, I'm referring to the mindfulness meditation. Why? Because mindfulness meditation is about the ability to watch our thoughts. Why? Because, as we said earlier, our thoughts lead to actions eventually, and that leads to many other things, that including our own personality. And so if we want to purify and remove the impurities, we want to catch it at the right time. And mindfulness is meditation is going to help us be aware at all times in our daily life, right? You can increase focus. We can do our best work, obviously, and very efficiently. It boosts our energy levels throughout the day, and you end up seeing that calm and peace inside ourselves. And it's a validation that there is peace and calm, and that peace and calm is inside ourselves. So when you meditate, you actually see that, and in a way, it validates what we are reading from outside, right? So obviously, a lot of this, there is a lot of effort going that's involved in this. And Malcolm Gladwell, in his book Outliers, laid out saying that to learn any skill, it requires 10,000 hours, or to master any skill, I should say, 10,000 hours of practice has to be put in, and you can learn anything, pretty much anything, right? Now, my question to all of us is something that's as important as this. Is it worth this effort, right? It's life changing. Is it not worth the effort? Now, uh, we also want to see ourselves in this process, and we briefly talked about this, which is to, it's again a framework for seeing where we are in the path: frequency, intensity, and recovery. This is to show ourselves, okay, we are on this path. Am I making progress? You can see ourselves in how frequently do we, let's say, get angry or annoyed or disappointed. How intense is that feeling or emotion? Are we able to come out of it very quickly, right? How quickly do we recover back to our centered state? These are good indications on the fact that we are making progress. So uh, back to Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours, we have plenty of time. We take every life situation as an opportunity to practice the values, right? If we were to do that, every waking hour, every waking minute is an opportunity. Everything that comes our way is an opportunity. So 10,000 hours is nothing. We have a lot, we can do a lot more, right? So instead of thinking of life and spirituality as two different things, just see that each reinforces the other. We can gain and make the right decisions in life based on what spirituality teaches us, and we can use life opportunities as a way to assimilate spirituality, right? But there's just one more question there, which we had a few relevant questions, which is, okay, are you telling me that I cannot pursue anything, pursue pleasure, wealth, fame, power, and so on? In fact, it's just the opposite. Go ahead. Go ahead and pursue what you need to pursue. We are not asking you to do anything different in terms of your goals. No need to change the goals. Do everything following the Dharma or the universal values, be it any of these. But one thing, do not tie happiness to it. Do not tie happiness to it. What then happens is something very, very strange. You will start to thoroughly enjoy whatever it is that you're trying to do, right? So this, I'll leave you with one more slide here, which is, do anything, everything, pursue your goals, not for happiness, but from happiness. Thank you, my friends. That I will stop here. There are a couple of more slides. We started here saying this is what we want to do in life. I believe we have covered most of it. And I personally think it is completely worth it. And I hope you agree. So I will stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kishore. That was an awesome presentation. Great and lovely perspectives. I think I noticed